Okay.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone. We have a full agenda today, but actually wanted to start with quick introductions around the room because we have some new faces with us, and we can just say who we are and a sentence or so of background and why we're here. And why don't Sean, can I start with you and we'll circulate around there?
Sure. Good afternoon, Sean Clancy, City of Portsmouth.
And our liaison extraordinaire, yes.
And your staff liaison to the Arts and Cultural Commission.
And the assistant city manager for
Oh,
economic and community development.
Got you, Sean. Yeah, okay.
I'm gonna make sure people know who you are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sean is also the liaison for the Public Art Review Committee as well.
Yes.
He does all the arts.
And EDC or economic.
Yes.
There's a lot of hats.
Yeah. Yes. Kate Cook, I'm the city council representative on the Arts and Cultural Commission, and I'm also on the Public Art Review Committee as well.
I'm Ken Goldman. I'm a photographer, and that's all. I'm an artist on the commission, and I wander around town taking a lot of photos of Portsmouth.
I'm Jeffrey Cooper. I'm the group secretary. I'm have an artist designation on the group. I'm a furniture maker, wood sculptor, wood artist. And been in Portsmouth a long time. I'm gonna give back to the arts community.
Genevieve Achel. I'm also on as an artist, but I'm also a resident and live around the corner from Jeffrey, which is kind of hilarious. And I'm also with New Hampshire Theater Project nonprofit in Portsmouth. I've lived in Portsmouth since we still had topless bars, as we were talking about. With that.
Is that what brought you here?
Yes, I was a performer, you know.
You're getting cut off.
No shirt, your shoes.
Yeah. Karen Rosania, on the artist category. I own my own art studio here in Portsmouth. And I guess the reason I'm here is a lot of us worked on the cultural plan and just really want to see it through.
It's amazing. So you'll have to tell me more about that. I'm Eli King. I'm having an identity crisis, clearly. To the point where I don't actually remember if I'm a resident or a musician or whatever, but I'm a cellist. I work at Portsmouth Music and Arts Center, and thank you for your message. Happy to be here.
Hi, I'm Hope Puzo. I am on the commission as a resident. It'll be 5 years in May that I've been in Portsmouth, and my day job is I'm the tourism manager at the Portsmouth Chamber of Commerce. And Erin Dubois. I'm not on the commission, but I am participating in the education and advocacy work group. I'm a flutist and the general manager of the Portsmouth Symphony.
And I'm Demi Dubois. Now that I'm unrelated. Yes, I am here representing 3S Art Space, and I'm on the agenda, so I will give a little introduction later about how I got here. But I'm sorry I missed the meeting last month and the orientation, but I did meet with Emma on Friday, and she gave me a half-hour overview, so I'm excited to meet you all and to get to work.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Illingworth. This is my second meeting. I'm here as the executive director of the Port City Makerspace. Former Portsmouth resident at various points in my life, now a Kittery resident. Super happy to be here. Artist and maker myself, but I'm representing as a nonprofit.
And I'm Emma Stratton. I'm the executive director of Portsmouth Historical Society, so I'm representing an organization. And I have been with this group since the cultural plan was started a few years ago. So I was fortunate enough to be a part of that process, which then led to the creation of the ACC.
And I'm Linnea Grimm. I'm the president and CEO of Strawberry Bank Museum, and I'm co-chair along with Emma. And I've been now in Portsmouth 3 years, so I came in right at the tail end of the cultural plan, but got to participate a little bit in that. And I am also an amateur cellist, so music and symphonies are very near and dear to my heart.
And there's us.
I'm Teresa. I've been a Portsmouth resident for 5 years, not including the little stint in New York I did. And I am the vice president of the board at New Hampshire Art Association.
I think the only person we're missing today is Margarita.
And she's on vacation.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll move on with the agenda as printed, which our first piece is to vote on the minutes from the March 16th meeting. So do I have a motion to pass those minutes?
So
Karen, great. Second?
I'll second.
Okay, great. Any discussion or corrections needed?
I abstain. I wasn't here.
already something.
So then could I have a vote? All those in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
Any opposed? And one abstention. Great. So now I'm happy to turn things over to Demi, and welcome. We're so glad to have you with us and to tell us a little bit about 3S.
Sure. So I'm going to give a little bit of background about who I am because there are a lot of 6 degrees or 3 degrees of separation here. And I've also been involved in a lot of kind of volunteer projects that may spark an interest with some of you as well. So I'd be happy to talk about those. So I grew up in Durham and then I went away for 30 years, except for a 3-year stint in the late 90s. My former husband was attending Franklin Pierce Law Center in Concord, New Hampshire. And so while we were living in Concord, I was the registrar and the first director of administration at Concord Community Music School, which is where Erin teaches flute. And then I raised my kids in Melrose, Massachusetts, which I think is where Eli is from, right? And in Melrose, I spent 6 years on the Melrose Cultural Council, 5 of those years as chair. And you may be familiar that the Massachusetts Cultural Council has about over 300 municipalities that they donate or provision money to. And then those local cultural councils then disperse grants at the local level to individuals and organizations. So I was involved in the grant team process. But while I was on the council, cultural council, I got to know a lot of artists in town, and I realized how many working visual artists were living in Melrose. And I started talking to folks about starting a Melrose Open Studio tour. So we ended up in 2016, I think, having an open studio tour of about 16 artists. We had a map. People could walk around from place to place, you know. And then that grew to about 50 artists in 25 locations. And it's celebrating its 10-year anniversary this year. During the pandemic, we had to shift course, of course, and we ran an outdoor arts market similar to a farmer's market. We also had mini art galleries, kind of like the little public library or many libraries. Can't think of it.
Little libraries.
Little libraries, yeah. So artists would put up a little gallery on their front lawns. And again, we had a map. And what was nice about Melrose is that a lot of it was within walking distance. So there was a loop of about a 4-mile loop where you could see about 10 different little galleries. Then once my children launched and into the world, I realized that my home was really in the seacoast of New Hampshire. So I moved up here 4 years ago. And I discovered 3S Art Space because I am an avid live music fan. So I was noticing that, you know, I'd go around to Jimmy's press room, music hall, Kittery Dance Hall, 3S Art Space, and I just thought I loved how accessible it was. You know, coming from Greater Boston, it was always a challenge to like get tickets, get to places, park, find a place to eat, like, and with 3S, I could just kind of walk right in, and it was so accessible. And they had shows that there was enough variety there that it kept me really interested. And it wasn't until I went to 3 or 4 performances that I discovered the art gallery. I was like, wow, this is right here, and it's open and it's free. And I really just fell in love with the programming there. And I just want to read the mission. So 3S Art Space is a 501c3 nonprofit contemporary arts organization that combines a mixed-use performance space, a large art gallery, lobby gallery, and a restaurant partner. Through the unique lens of contemporary arts experiences, 3S Art Space invites divergent perspectives and encourages lively discourse centered around issues of today. So I've been there to see authors speak, movies, live music, lots of activities. I wanted to point out a few. For one thing, what's nice about the performance space is that it has a capacity of 400 standing, but the arrangement can be made, seated, standing, intimate venue, intimate spaces. Aaron and I happened to be there on Saturday night for the premiere of a contemporary classical piece. And it was really lovely the way the space was arranged. In the art gallery at the moment, I'm going to pass this around. There's a wonderful exhibit, a woman, Sam Moder. She's went to school in the area. I'm trying to think. She now is based in Tampa, but she's made use of the height of the gallery space. So normally she works on about a 12-foot canvas, but she's been able to use all 26 feet of height in the gallery space. So I really encourage you to stop by there open Thursdays through Sundays, 12 to 6, or later when we have performances. But you walk in there and it's just so impressive, the height. We have a lot of collaborations coming up, and I wanted to point out a few. One is that on May 16th, PMAC is going to have their Teen Rock, Jazz, and Blues Spring Concert. On May 22nd.
Did you say 16 or 15?
16, May 16th. On May 22nd, the Portsmouth High School Fine Arts Night is wonderful. The students really enjoy showing in the space. On June 4th is the opening reception, Meet the Artist of the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation Artist Advancement Grant Exhibit. That's a wonderful opportunity to meet the artists and also to network with the New Hampshire Charitable Foundation folks and other supporters of the arts. And then we're going to have our Loading Dock concert series this summer again, which is outside in the little courtyard between Barrio, 3S Art Space. And it can only accommodate about 75 or 100 people. Lots of local artists are performing. And we're going to do it on a suggested donation basis only this summer. I know accessibility was one of the themes Emma mentioned to me. So we're trying out the suggested donations. I think that's about it. Anybody has any questions? Happy to answer them or talk to you afterwards.
Well, thank you and welcome. Glad to have you with us. You're bringing such a great wealth of background. We were just talking the arts and or the advocacy and education working group was just talking about how we're very open to looking to different areas, particularly of New England, to see, you know, what things they've done and what we can learn from them. So talking, I was like, oh, brain would be good to pick on a few of the things we were just talking about. Great. Well, next up on the agenda is our work group reports. And is there a subgroup who would like to go first?
It'll be brief, but we do have an official meeting set up for next week. First time we're going to be gathering in my studio. And we are doing a pre-read on the Artist Work Live report, all of us, just to get up to speed on that. And then secondly, just taking a look at the art space proposal, even though I know things are still being finalized, but that's the organization out of Minneapolis that specializes in artist live workspace. And they gave us a proposal. We've gone through the capital improvement project plan. I'm sharing this more for the new individuals that have joined the commission. And we are awaiting final word on $65,000 that we've requested to begin an artist live work feasibility study in the city of Portsmouth. And this, we hope, will ultimately lead to a place where artists can live and work in the city of Portsmouth. So that would be, I think, our end goal. So, and I know Jeffrey's been working on some existing spaces that we're trying to continue to advocate for space.
I've kept in contact with Andrea and Craig at the Housing Authority. And although, and for those who are new, this is about the Sherburne School redevelopment where the Lister Academy was, to make the old school building into Artist Live Work studio space. So we've been in conversation with them for months and months and months. It is currently scheduled as part of a phase 2. They're going great guns on their phase 1 right now. So it's going to be a little while, but they continually assure me that when they get to that part of the project, it will be, you know, Artist Live Work studio space. They have got their architect on board who is starting to think about that. At some point in time, they plan to invite us to do a walkthrough with a brainstorm. It doesn't have to be just us. It could be some other studio artists that we would invite who might have an input onto how the building could be adaptive reuse for that purpose. Anyway, so that's a long way to say that it's in the pipeline, but it's slow and we're still in contact with them.
Can I just add, Craig presented, from the Portsmouth Housing Authority, presented at a chamber event on housing and specifically highlighted that the phase 2 would be Artist Live Workspace. So publicly in a room full of housing advocates.
I was going to say, I was at that meeting too, and I was
Yeah.
like, where did I just hear that? I was so excited to hear it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Great.
yeah, which is good. So it's working.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
The hard work
Yeah.
that committee has put in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you.
And I should say for our new folks, this is the collaborations work group, right? Yep.
Yep.
Right. Great. Anything else? We'll switch to communications.
Sure. Yeah, we just met before this meeting. So this is our first time meeting since our retreat. So we went over the notes from that, and a couple things on our to-do list that we're going to start working on is we're going to try to build out a little resource list for our section of the website, which will include some professional development opportunities as well as like local resources where people could take art classes if they want. And we're trying to figure out how to fit in artists maybe in their own home spaces into that, or like what's the right way to go about it, just because people move, places change, and we want the list to be somewhat evergreen with maybe some updating. So we're kind of still trying to figure that aspect out, but we're going to start putting the list together. Another thing that we're going to work on for the website are no cost and low cost events that can be found in Portsmouth. So we're going to start with both annual and sort of repeating. So Art Round Town is a great example of no cost event that happens every month. And so we kind of brainstormed some different events there. If anyone has any that they're thinking of, that would be good. Feel free to email them to me. Maybe that would be a good place to start. But we have a pretty good list, and so what I'm thinking is once I compile both of these, maybe I'll send them to Sean to send out, and if people they're thinking, oh, I know another one or something like that, maybe
Yeah.
that's a good way to go about it. And then the other thing we talked about was bringing back the social media videos, or what exactly we wanted to do with that. So we were discussing going for Fall for the Arts again. Let's go. We are back.
We're back. Comes back around.
Comes back around. Thank goodness we waited long enough. The new plan will be to film as much as we can from our commissioners, in July and August, so that it is ready to go for fall. So we do have a little bit of buffer time, but that being said, everyone get ready. How about that?
Would you like some time at a meeting? Would that make it more convenient?
Yeah,
Like if
maybe
we
that would be
carved
good.
out a half hour, made a meeting a little shorter?
And I was saying, like, with the first one, I was obviously also commuting to New York, so that was a little tough, but my schedule will be pretty flexible from here on out. I'm around. So happy to work with people on that. And we were talking about doing it in the local art spaces like Bohinkle Park, or the other local art installations. Also, if people want to do it at their own places, that works as well. So we are going back to the question of how have the arts changed your life? And so the other piece of that, well, I'll just go for it now, is to sprinkle in like your position on this commission. So resident artist or organization, just try to like work that into your answer. So yeah, that was that. The other thing I sent Sean at the beginning of this meeting that he can hopefully forward is I once again have the survey for bios and pictures. So for the new people, it's 4 to 5 sentences about yourself. It should say it on there, and just a picture. And on our website, we have like a little slideshow where people can actually see our commissioners. So if anyone wants to update theirs, feel free. If there are any new information, feel free to review what you have written for yourself. Eli, maybe we'll switch you to whatever your new position is as well. And I think we also have our work groups on them, definitely. But I think that's one of the questions in the survey. If not, I think I'll be able to figure out. So that I'd like to update for the website. So there'll be a lot of website updates coming, which is exciting. And then another thing we discussed was using some of those resources as social media posts to push out. So we ended our meeting looking at the city's stuff online, which was interesting. Could use more arts.
Yep.
Always good. So I think that's everything.
Well, no, 2 other quick things.
Okay, yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead. No.
because I was keeping track. So, in the minutes from our retreat, we said that we were gonna put information about the 250 celebration on
Right.
our website. We don't really have the ability to do that, so somewhere, and maybe it was the last meeting, we agreed that we were gonna tell people that the chamber is posting that, so that people can press a button when they're posting to the chamber that this is a 250 event. So we just want to spread the word about that, but we can't do that on our website.
Yeah, and I think another thing for that events that might be worth it is we were looking at like the senior center calendar, the library calendar, like all these calendars. It's easy enough to just add those as links too, so we could really point to the chamber, like find 250 and other events here. Here's more options too, and just list them, because that's come up so many times of where's the calendar, and so why don't we just get rid of all of them? So that's part of that list. And then
And the other thing was about the work groups that
Oh, that's
we
right.
were supposed to set
so
an all call of some sort. Go ahead, Tracy.
yeah, the other piece was we on our list was having new community members that are interested in liaisoning on the work groups. So we're thinking we'll just do a call in the newsletter. If anyone knows anyone who would be interested, that's probably also a good way. And we're thinking the best course of action is to point them to our lovely chairs to maybe vet and assign to work groups as their interests lie.
Yep. That's funny you say that because Emma and I was
We were
just
just
having
talking
this
about that.
conversation in the last week or so because somebody did reach out saying, hey, I'm interested in a work group. So I guess if it comes into us, vetting, we think, there's not going to be a huge amount unless we saw some type of strange red
Yeah.
flag, right?
Mhm.
That, I don't even know how somebody could benefit from a position as a work group, but right? So probably get assigned
Or yeah,
pretty
vetting
quickly
their
and then
interest and putting
connect
it in
them
one.
with the chair of the work group. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah.
And I think there was some talk about like some sort of like a press release or something, because again, as everybody's introducing themselves, I think the richness is in the experience and all that this group brings forward, and I think the community would really benefit by knowing that. And whether it's just a couple of like the top accomplishments, I know that Jen did a nice job pulling together that slide presentation and a couple top priorities for 26 and beyond, but I just think getting the word out is always a good thing.
Yeah, I agree. That would be nice. I think that was something else we talked, that it would be nice to put another thing in the Portsmouth Herald and on Seacoast Online. The last two I've really highlighted the survey, and we were just discussing like stats aren't necessarily like the most interesting thing in the world. So maybe I love your idea of like maybe highlighting some of the experience and diversity in the room, and then just doubling down on some like, we've completed this and here are our goals, if anyone's interested.
Yeah,
But I get a lot of good feedback from those. A lot of people
yeah,
email me, which I'm always surprised, kind of out of the woodworks of what I get back.
yeah. I
Cool.
just think it shows
That's
a strong,
exciting to
strong
me.
commitment on behalf of the city for the arts too. Just
Yeah.
another strong commitment in another way.
One thing I forgot to mention is that I'm a resident of Rye. And I was wondering how I can get plugged into things that are happening in Portsmouth at the city level. You mentioned a newsletter. I just want to make sure that I'm getting the communications that I need to where the Arts and Cultural Commission might be involved.
Definitely. The newsletter you can sign up for on the city website. Ken is the go-to for the newsletter, I think. You. About it.
Well, I can send you, there's a really good link for the city website. Just give me your email address and
Okay,
it tells you how to connect to everything in the city,
okay.
including the newsletter. And the newsletter is a wonderful font of information sometimes.
There's also a chamber web page that's Go Portsmouth, which is tries to list everything.
And then like the library and the senior center have their own newsletters, which are super helpful.
And when we put this list together as well, I think it will be illuminating for what the resources are that we have. Like it seems like the thing we've kind of discovered is a lot of the individual places have their own individual calendars. But then like Go Portsmouth, I think does a pretty good job of their calendar is pretty comprehensive, but still, let's go home.
I do have an exciting note that's just kind of in line with our communications group. The chamber is actually working on partnering with an organization who does more of a comprehensive calendar. So they actually use AI to pull events, because right now we rely on people to post their own to our calendar, which sometimes, things fall through the cracks. So we don't have like every single event going on listed. So it seems like there's less to do than there really is. So this will be probably launching in July, but it'll actually pull in pictures and stuff too. So it'll look a lot prettier instead of just words. And it'll just pull all of our member events into one place, and you'll be able to sort it by like music, theaters, art stuff. So we're super excited for that. So yeah, so that will really now be like the central calendar for events going on in Portsmouth.
That's great, because, one of the things we've struggled with from the beginning of this organization is, and we talked about it today in our meeting, there's so much stuff happening here. And it's like, and you mentioned somebody, you did something, it's like, I didn't know that was going on.
Yeah.
So the more sources of information, but that sounds really good.
It will of course only be our member events, but particular to our group, every single arts place pretty much is a member, like all the big ones and all that. So they'll all be listed on there. The city lists all their stuff too. So I think it'll be great.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Good, great. That's a lot of exciting things.
Yeah, definitely.
Good.
I can speak
yeah.
on behalf of education and I think ours will be a little bit briefer because we just met. and talked priorities, but the biggest point of focus is understanding the issues rather than pointing and saying that these things are the issues. We want to hear from the local teachers, the superintendents, and not just for arts, but also cultural things and preservation points. It's arts and advocacy. So points of education for the community as to what's going on, not just education at the earliest stages. But I think already it's been illuminated that there's, the arts are often the thing that gets cut when budget considerations come up. And so that means advocacy at the local level as well as the state level, and understanding what some of the districts nearby that do arts education really well, how they are navigating those challenges, and what kind of advocacy this group could contribute to positive advocacy, even at the state level. That was the general.
Yes.
How do we do?
I think so.
Anything to add?
Yep.
So.
There's a lot still to understand there.
Yeah.
One idea as you were talking, Eli, is I think we're really trying to advocate for the amount of money the arts bring into the city of Portsmouth. But another angle that we could really hit is like from a mental health standpoint and getting people out of isolation. There's a lot of really good proven data. I mean, it actually reduces falls and has other health outcomes and all that. So I wonder, even at the very least, we include a link on our website on the kind of the physical and mental health benefits of art.
Ooh, link to what? There's so much out there.
Yeah, and even if we start with a couple of, there has been articles published in the Portsmouth Herald, so maybe that would be a good place to start. It's been a little while, maybe like a year and a half. But I just think when you talk about advocacy and I think we've been doing, I think, a lot on the financial side, but I think there's a lot of in other areas as well.
Right. The book club that Russ started, we met last night, we read, I heard there was a secret chord music as medicine, and it is astounding what they are doing in research. And this was mostly about music, but it tied in other arts. I was particularly interested in, storytelling and theater, but how our brains work and how much the arts do. It's progressed far more than even I knew. So that's partly why I said that question is keeping up to date with the research be a challenge, but it's pretty amazing.
Yeah,
Wow.
maybe that would be a good link just to
Maybe
that.
then National Endowment for the Arts has a big, huge arts and health. That's a big focus.
I bet,
So
right.
perhaps they probably have stuff on their website now.
Still. What was the name of the book again? You said?
I heard there was a secret chord.
Okay. Oh, that's nice. Nice. Okay. Great. Well, let's move on to burning issues, which have some interesting things on here. So we want to do a update on Poetry Month project. Someone asked for this.
I'm happy to.
Great.
Everybody, I didn't
I've
ask
seen
for it.
some.
I'm
Okay.
happy to give the update. Yesterday, we had a reading of the poets participating in the Public Poetry Project at Readmore in the afternoon. It was very well attended. The room was crowded. Several poets came and shared their poetry that is up around the city. Was it Readmore? Readmore Books?
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So
EEDMOR.
yeah, it's great. It was a really nice event, and it was led by our current poet laureate, who's, by the way, at the very end of her term, because we will have a new poet laureate announced next month, because that's how that cycle works. So that was a very nice event, and the poetry is up all over the city. So if you haven't seen it, it's not just in downtown. It's in locations outside the downtown as well. And when you find a poem, you can scan the QR code and it'll give you all the locations across the whole city where there's poetry. They did a great job of matching the poems with location. So you'll find that there's, in many cases, the themes are similar to location. It'd be very nice. And we have the unfortunate situation of having more people wanting to participate than we had space on both sides. So initially we had more locations than we had poems. And now we have more poems than we have locations. So people are still like, oh, can I submit? I really want to.
Nice.
And they've tried to make accommodations, but at this stage, no more.
Right.
Like
April 20th, right?
Only 10 days from the end of National Poetry Month. So it went really well. There was a great response. And
That's
I think
wonderful.
they're planning to do it next year.
Great.
And there is some interest in having some conversation around what it would take to annually publish the poems of participated. And so if anybody has experience with local publishing,
We just talked about that.
yes.
Yeah.
It's worth a conversation because it would be kind of neat every year to have an anthology of the public tree project.
And if you haven't seen them, it's a lot of fun to just look in the windows and see all these poems from all these people, some of whom you probably know. So it's been a neat thing.
Yeah.
So how many different locations ended up?
We're at approximately 50. I don't have exactly
that's great.
exact number. And we had about 70 poems submitted, but a lot of poets submitted 2 poems. That's why we had 70 and they chose one. And we had a poet come yesterday all the way from Manchester who had lived in Portsmouth for a few years, loved it so much, saw this, submitted a poem. We had a poet from Alton. Like, so people in the whole region were so excited about this poet's word that they submitted. Yeah.
Connecting piece, I just hadn't thought of, I don't know why until this moment, but Thomas Bailey Aldrich, who is a author and poet who lived in Portsmouth. He was a child in one of the houses on Strawberry Banks campus. But we have a new exhibit in the Aldrich Garden that has poetry. And I didn't think of it, so it's public poetry all the time. And it connects to the flowers. So it's really effective a little later on. So like there's a poem about lilies, right where our lilies blew. So it's a lovely, nice poetry connection.
Just tell them.
Yeah.
They can tell people to come and check
And
it
there
out.
can be some nice,
Wonderful.
we've been talking about this for months and it just went like, oh yeah, we have poetry out like all the time. Okay, I think one that may take a few more minutes to talk about is Prescott Park Arts Festival. Stage upgrade is coming to the city council tonight. And Councilor Cook would you
My
be able to
motion.
say,
Yeah.
a little background on that?
Yeah, I know. So this originated from I think a discussion we were having initially about Prescott Park master plan and implementation. Because we have this lovely master plan for the park, but we don't have funding to implement it. The funding was tied up in this ugly word, McIntyre project, which didn't move forward. And the city had anticipated enough funding to fund the project. But at this stage, we have funded part of the master plan, and that's phase 1A, which was like a modified phase to deal with the flooding that has been occurring specifically along Water Street and Marcy Street. Initially, phase 1A was just taking the Shaw Building, which is a historic resource in the middle of the park, and preserving it by elevating it, getting it out of the flood zone. But then in the last major flooding we had a few years ago, the Players Ring building, which is also a historic building, was impacted by flooding. And so the city realized that we couldn't just elevate and move the Shaw, which we were going to move it in about the length of its building and elevate it. We had to do something with the Players Ring as well. So the city will present on that tonight, the changes to phase 1A, but it also involves moving and raising the Players Ring building. So which impacts the Shaw because we can't move the Shaw if we're moving the Players Ring back and trying to also preserve it. So it's important for this committee because it's not just cultural preservation of 2 historic important buildings that sit right in Prescott Park, but it also directly impacts Prescott Park Arts Festival because initially phase 1A also included this idea of building a green room adjacent to the Shaw warehouse, an elevator system and a green room, eliminating the sheds that we use at the city right now for maintenance at the park. That with the change in plans, they cannot basically build the green room space, and they will be leaving the sheds and maintenance will stay in the park. But then how do we address like the long-term needs of the arts festival, which would have used that green room space? And so the stage, as you all know, is deteriorating in the park. It has gone through, it's been rebuilt repeated times over the 52 years of the Prescott Park Arts Festival. But every few years, they have to completely resheath the stage in plywood because it gets exposed to water. And frankly, when it sits through the winter, it's a little dangerous. You don't want kids playing under it. You don't want your kids playing on it. You know, the stage won't support certain things like a piano. So they can't have performances that require a piano on the stage because the weight is a problem. That also impacts what kind of sets they can build. And then we have this green room space, which is actually a series of trailers and fencing, which they've done a really good job making it kind of disappear a little in the park, but it's not beautiful. So we had conversations with them and with the city, and the goal is to get to a place where they can partner with the city like many of our other partners do, like Players Ring, PMAC that's going into the meeting house. All these are rental spaces in the city that are city buildings. Prescott Park rents the park space so that they can improve the stage at their own expense, so that it is a functional stage for Prescott Park Arts Festival in the long run, so that they're not continually doing this Band-Aid effect. That is not in the Prescott master plan, that vision. The vision was to move it back where the current shed sits next to the Shaw, but to also continue to have a temporary stage facility. So we're not going to prejudge what kind of stage they would need to house their facilities. I know they want a covered stage, but also to house some of their green room space instead of having to have the temporary trailer in the park. So tonight I will be advocating for that at the city council, entering into a collaboration, the city entering to a collaboration with Prescott Park Arts Festival so that they can raise the funds to build the facilities that they need. So that isn't exactly the motion. It's close to that. And we will be getting a report back from the city on phase 1A of Prescott Park master plan. And so.
So essentially, they need the city's permission to be able to build a new stage. But my understanding, Courtney emailed us separately as well about this, is, as you indicated, their Prescott Park is gonna raise the money for this. Do you anticipate there being any pushback from the city council, and what do you think that would be?
Or from public comment.
Or from public?
There will be.
We can speak to that.
Yes, there will be pushback during public comment. Not from the city council. I don't know anyone on the city council that's going to push back on this yet. I don't know until we're there.
Okay.
But during public comment, there will be pushback from probably a few neighbors that have been vocal over many years.
Sure.
About their desire for Prescott Park Arts Festival not to have a permanent stage, and that we should take a park first approach.
Right. That's what I was going to say.
So-
On social comments already.
Yes.
Is that there's a common refrain of park first, and that the arts festival just happens to be there. Yeah.
Interesting.
But there are so many examples out in the world of very successful parks with very successful stages and
Including the clamshell in Boston,
Right.
right? And so it's challenging, this idea of park first, but Prescott Park Arts Festival has been in the park the majority of the life of the park.
Yes.
So Prescott Park Arts Festival is around for 52 years. I think that's longer than half of the term of Prescott Park. So since the 1970s. Yes,
Good.
yeah, and Genevieve sat on the master planning committee. So.
I was on that committee.
Yes.
Until we got sunsetted because the money ran out. But that was good because now I can be on here. But one of the things that came up a lot with the Park First, which I never knew until I was on that committee, was how much damage the park itself incurs from the current placement of the stage. If it was farther back, there could be more you know, lawn seating, the pathways would not be impeded so much and the sidewalks. So if they're building it in a slightly different place, because it's really in an awkward place, it's smack in the middle instead of off to one side. And I never knew the reason for that was that Prescott Park was given to the city in packets. You probably know more of this. But the idea of the park first is there's no reason why the stage and the festival don't go along with that.
Mhm.
And it was an issue because there were a couple people on the committee that pushed back. And I remember now because many of us wanted a permanent stage. And we finally agreed to just put that off until phase one happened. And so now we're here. But I think it's, you know, the safety factor, the
Yeah.
fact that, you know, they lose something like 30% of their
Yeah.
productions because they
It's
have to be
crazy.
canceled.
Right.
If there's
Yeah.
even a threat of thunder and lightning, if it
Mhm.
rains. And it just brings so many people into the city. We were talking about it, it's one of our free.
Yeah, it's
programs.
amazing.
Right.
But go ahead.
And I was just gonna say quickly on that note, a couple other thoughts is I wonder what domino effect that's impacting restaurants, hotels, when they have to announce 2 days ahead of time, we have to cancel because we know bad weather's coming, so domino effect. But I would also just calling out again from the cultural plan, the very, very strong community feedback on outdoor music was huge, outdoor performances. And then just, I'm not sure how long the Prescott Park Arts Festival has been doing this, but just on suggested donation for how long that's been. So again, from a financial affordability and access. And then lastly, I think there definitely needs to be improvements from a physical access standpoint, where there are lots of roots and lumps and bumps and all that, and it makes it difficult for people in wheelchairs and all that to get through. So I do think some upgrades and accessibility are necessary. And that all to me seems to fit in nicely with Park First, because that's what the community is saying that they want.
Where would they be moving the stage to?
So with the altered phase 1A, there's not much room because both the Shaw and the Players Room will have to move back to be up off the road, to be elevated.
Do you mean back, like
Back
towards Strawberry Lane?
Towards, no,
Or
back
back.
towards the Prescott Park
River.
stage.
Okay.
So
Okay, so
about
that's
5
different
to
then.
6 feet, they will have to
Right.
move, so they will be, that building is my understanding, will have to move back. And there is a drainage pipe that runs where the sidewalk is between the Players Ring and the formal garden, underneath that sidewalk that runs the length of the park, and you can't build on top of it. That's really critical. We have to maintain that easement over the drainage pipe should we have any issues. So the most that the stage can come back is probably 15 to 20 feet back. And we'd have to figure out how to handle the ancillary structures like the green room space. I don't know what their plans will be around that. That's kind of what this enabling vote allows them to start discussing with the city, is what planning could look like. Because we don't want them spending any money on plans for a stage if we're not, if the city's not committed to enabling that. Because the planning itself is expensive and they've paid for plans more than once. So I think that that's critical. It doesn't give them a huge amount of additional space, but it gives a little bit more space. And it frees up some of the sidewalk access. I think it's also important to note that the reason the sidewalks have not been improved, this is what I was told, have not been improved in the park, and why we have still chain link fence, is because we have this master plan in place that delineates what happens and in what order.
Mhm.
And as long as we have this plan in place, even if we're not going to execute it for the next 30 years, we're not going to go doing other projects and other improvements to the park because they cost money. You're not going to invest that money then to turn around and implement a different plan. So there might be a need to suspend implementation of the master plan so that we can make improvements to things like sidewalks in the interim. Because I think there's this idea that, well, if we're going to do this plan, the sidewalk might not be there. So why would we spend money changing it? But if we're not implementing the plan for 30 years at least, then we're in a different situation, I think, and we have to think of it differently.
So Prescott Park was a big part of that, but you said also part of all this phase one stuff are two other buildings that would be of the interest of this group, the Shaw and the building that Players Ring is in. Those improvements are happening regardless because they're city-owned buildings that's in the plan.
That is in the plan and it's funded.
So we don't,
So-
as far as Players Ring goes, they don't need any extra advocacy on our behalf.
They shouldn't need it. We'll see when we get to a different stage. My biggest concern is always when the city comes and does work like this, that an organization is directly impacted. Like, so Prescott Park's offices are in the shop and the Players Ring, clearly the theater is there. And then everyone upstairs as well. So when this work happens, they clearly can't operate.
Right.
So I think we'll have to have some discussions about how you help the Players Ring through that process. Like when
I
that
don't think
happens.
Players Ring was in the original plan, but the flooding happened after the plan.
Yes.
Realized the
Mhm.
flooding is actually much worse than even when the plan was written.
And that we can only expect that to be getting worse.
Yeah.
Exactly. You know, very
Yes.
firsthand the situation and the need to take action sooner rather than later. This didn't anticipate flooding at the Gundelows location, the Gundelows office location. But that's because it just didn't happen to flood. It was close.
It was close.
It's close.
I mean,
So-
that's, yeah,
Is that also city-owned?
no, that's Strawberry Bend. Yeah, the building.
Yeah.
But we need to work with the city very carefully on the pipe system, the drainage, because one of the main drainage pipes is underwater half the time right now, so.
And will remain so. And so there has to be a discussion around how we deal with. And that's why that drainage line has to be,
Yeah, so-
easement has to be accessible. But I think we have to continue discussions around that. Phase 1A will make sure it's preserved and probably redone. But I don't know if they've talked about a valve that closes during flooding or not. There's good and bad right there,
Right.
you know. We have water that comes up that pipe into the city sewer system. And then and it's not just that pipe, it comes in by the library up through the stormwater system. So the stormwater drains drain to the water. And so water comes through them and then up into the street.
Yeah.
As well, so it's hard to address.
I had a question about, so if Prescott Park, this motion would allow Prescott Park to rent the space, I think that's what I heard, right? Or that would be what they're moving towards.
The goal is to have them the motion allows them to collaborate with the city to build a new stage, for them to
Oh.
raise the money to build a new stage.
Okay.
And ancillary structures.
Right.
So.
So I wasn't sure if there was a fundamental change to the way they would, okay.
No, they still will keep their same, it doesn't change their lease agreement with the city. Everybody should know that if they build a stage, it's basically a gift to the city.
Yeah.
The city's park.
Right.
And they would be raising money to build a stage in the city's park. So there's other benefits to the city
Right.
because the city has a stage and they're not using it. Which with weather changing, that's in the fall, in the spring,
Right.
great place for kids band concerts, right?
Oh, it's huge, right?
Yeah, so
And there's, I mean, we'll talk about master plan in a moment, but there's so many connecting pieces into what people would like to see moving forward. I'm thinking about like shoulder season, activating shoulder season things, which I know the chamber is very active in. So for this, for tonight, is it helpful for the commission to vote to say that we support the motion that will be coming up, and I'm happy to be there. So I was going to go. I don't know if I can speak on with like 8 different hats on. I support this in all different ways. As a neighbor, as a
yeah, you can.
Okay.
And I think it would be helpful for the council to hear from the Arts and Cultural Commission on this because we're the stewards of the arts community.
So does anyone have, because it's tonight, I guess we need a pretty quick and brief statement that we can vote on?
I mean, it could be as simple as
Yeah.
in favor of the motion as presented by Councilor Cook. It really could be it. That's
Is that
That's Councilor Cook and Tabor.
in Tabor? Okay.
And I'm happy to draft something
Oh, great.
that we can work on in terms of like what the actual statement is, but
Arts and Culture Commission serves and look and advocates for many organizations that would be impacted by tonight's decision. And we voted earlier today to be in support of the motion as presented by Councilors Cook and Tabor, something like that.
And I can read you the motion if you want to know exactly what it says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just so that
Oh,
you
great.
have it, move for the city to collaborate with Prescott Park Arts Festival to plan for and initiate improvements to the park infrastructure funded by the festival to support the long-term needs of the organization. So it's very vague
Yes.
about what it's going to be, because we don't want to prejudge that.
Can you forward that to me for the minutes?
Yes, yes.
If we need to have some sort of a motion that we vote on
Yeah.
now,
Yep.
even if the motion is just to authorize Emma to.
I'd like to make a motion to support this statement as presented by Councilor Cook and Tabor.
Mhm.
Motion to support the motion.
Motion's-
Can I get a second?
Good, I was gonna say second. All right. Any additional discussion? All right, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm abstaining just because my motion.
Yeah, and I will also note that when Courtney wrote to us, she said anyone who lives locally and is a resident and would like to write in personal commentary to the city council is encouraged to do that, or to go and make a statement about the importance of the arts festival and the impact that it's had. So if anyone feels so compelled as a local resident, you're welcome to do that independently.
So
I
where
did,
do
and
we
you
do
should
that?
check off that you want it officially entered into the.
Thank you. Yep.
City website.
Yeah.
Okay.
Contact all city councilors. You just go to the city website, go to city council and contact them.
I just have a point of curiosity, because this would like open up the, I mean, it would probably mean a capital effort by Prescott Park. And it really is just like, yeah, as you said, it's vague and it's vague for a reason. Would this be like a granite structure or something, like something out of stone that they're putting down?
No, I'm not gonna prejudge
Yeah.
what they're going to do. We might end up in a place where we have to make this clearer. Those are some of those questions that I've got to ask Peter Rice from DBW when they
Yep.
present tonight. If they need a clearer instruction that we're talking about a stage and ancillary structures, and like, so that if they do, we will make it clearer. But we won't say what materials. It should be,
Would some of their fundraising as part of that also include, because they currently occupy some of the space in Shaw, you said, right?
they rent offices in the Shaw. I don't think that there's any
So they're renting there. Players Ring is renting at the other building.
Yeah.
Prescott Park is renting where they are.
yes, Prescott
So
Park.
it's
It's
all
all,
rental situations. There's just one of these nonprofits that will be doing capital funding to support.
I think of it like PMAC doing capital funding to do work on another city building, right?
Mhm.
So it's kind of like a renter build out. Like we do, almost all the restaurants do downtown and, you know,
Mhm.
yeah.
If we're there for public comment, do you need us to stay longer, do you think at all? Okay.
I think it'll be okay. I think the Prescott Park folks will hopefully be there to answer questions. And if there's a large crowd, we'll move it up. Usually we try to do that so that people don't have to sit through the rest of the meeting.
Yeah, which, thank
Be
you
long.
to everyone
Yeah.
who sits through.
But the advantage is that now you can speak on behalf of the commission.
Yeah,
because you
exactly.
voted.
Yeah,
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah,
yeah. Thank
yeah,
you.
happy to do it. My mini me and me will be there. She loves city council meetings.
Oh.
11. She may also make a public statement, just,
Hey, I
well, no,
love it.
not about the, hopefully about this, but about sidewalk conditions.
Great.
Yes.
I love that. So anytime she wants to talk,
Okay.
just send her my way. We can talk.
She sounds like a 50-year-old woman. I'm not kidding, like.
Have her throwing strings in the public schools also.
Yeah, we'll get her started. I'll be like 2 minutes, 2 minutes.
The last thing we had on the agenda was
Yeah,
the
thank you.
master plan.
Yep, and master plan. And so there is a draft city master plan at this point, and there will be a session this Wednesday, thank you, 4/22 at Community Campus for feedback. Interestingly enough, like I feel like everything in my life has conflicted with master plan things, but the musical at Little Harbor is that night, fifth grade musical. So I trying to figure out a way of being two places at once, but I think I have to support the arts in that way. So I don't know, Sean, do you have any additional words of like what type of feedback or anything? Like, would it be good for this group of people?
Yeah, I think they'll be similar to the last one, I think, big boards and stations, and so to give your feedback, and you can look at what is being proposed ahead of time.
Yeah. It's on the website now.
I think so. We seem to meet every day and talk about words.
So it starts, right?
That's a lot.
It is a lot, and there
Everything
is.
that's public is on the website, yes.
Okay.
And then this is another big opportunity from 6 to 8 PM. And I'm told there'll be food,
Oh, yeah,
so
that's exciting.
catering of some sort.
I'm planning on going
Okay,
for
great.
some tourism stuff.
Right, I was
but
gonna
I'll-
say there is tourism
Yeah.
worked in, there's a lot on preservation in the fifth section of it. There's a lot that will be of interest to this group. I think artists live work.
Is in there.
I think
Was a phrase somewhere.
I will just say that
You've seen it too.
there's not like an economic development board. There's not a tourism board. It's really a lot more about some of the structure, connectivity,
Right.
not necessarily zoning, but just different types of infrastructure that supports all of these things. It was a little bit surprising to me. There's not, like, I thought I'd be hanging out at the Economic Development Board,
Right.
but I won't. So you might have to just kind of dig around a little bit it won't be as obvious as.
So you said that the zoning is not in it, but we were hoping that the artist overlay district would be, but that's a zoning. Which means that it's not.
Well, no, there's definitely reference to zoning and things like that. My understanding is that this consultant is not redoing our zoning. They're basically providing input for the city to
Right.
then go back and look at their zoning. They weren't hired to revamp our zoning. They were hired to help us write a master plan.
But
Okay.
there are suggestions related to
Related to zoning,
zoning
yes.
that are definitely
Absolutely.
in it. That's about what, 40
Yeah.
pages, something, I mean, it's a
40 pages.
dense document.
Because I was planning to go to speak on behalf of the artist overlay district.
I think that's
Yeah.
valuable.
Yeah.
And I think it's valuable because we need to remind people again and again that we've sent that to the planning board to be incorporated in the master plan. I can't be there Wednesday night, so anybody who can, that's great. But I think it's constantly like important to share these reminders like we did with the Portsmouth Housing Authority. Because then it's in people's minds.
Yeah.
That's critical. So this is a goals document about what the vision for the city should be. There should be in this document items related to our cultural plan. So everybody should be watching for items related to the cultural plan, because that was one of the planning documents that fed into this. And if you don't see items related to the cultural plan, you should flag that. I think that's, because that should be pervasive. The arts and culture of the community should be pervasive in this document. So it's important.
And there is language to that.
There definitely.
Is, yeah.
What's the opportunity for things in this plan to change based on feedback on Wednesday? Like, will
Plan is not written. This is kind of the last big
feedback opportunity?
public meeting,
Okay.
right? There's other conversations that have been going on, but this is a big public with the boards and I think we've had one of those. In addition to all the surveys, there's a new survey out as well.
Oh, is there? Okay.
If you go to the survey, you'll see what has bubbled up and is being proposed by the consultant based on what they've been hearing for the last year. So that's an opportunity. Please take the survey. And then Wednesday night's another opportunity to be there in person.
And UTL, based on possibly what's said on Wednesday, could make adaptations to the master plan.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's
Okay.
not, it is
It's
not
not,
written.
nothing is set in
It is
stone.
not, nope.
When does that happen?
I would think over the summer
Okay,
for delivery in the fall to the city.
thank you.
Sean, I'm gonna be away on Wednesday. Is there another way to provide any added or necessary feedback beyond what we've talked about? And I've done the survey and provided input there, but is there anything as a commission that we wanna highlight, maybe the top 3 or 4 must-haves? Or, I mean, I don't know, I'm just thinking, is there any other way that we could have impact individually or as a group?
I think the commission could put something together if you wanted to. There's no barriers to providing input. There's a couple of formal ways to do it. So who, Lene, you're on the.
I'm on the, yeah.
Master Plan
An
Advisory Group. So you've got someone who's been
Yeah.
going, yeah.
And I got the survey that they're trying to get out to all businesses, including arts and culture. So I can share that with you to send to the whole
Okay,
commission.
yeah, so there's a couple of
Yeah,
more specific avenues.
yeah. So that survey might be a good way. I think there were some specific questions and then open-ended, and it's for
Yeah.
not only kind of like business owners, but anyone, residents, visitors, kind of like we did with the cultural.
And that's
Yeah,
different.
I did that already, yeah.
Okay, good.
Because that's different than the big survey. There's two
Yeah,
surveys,
I know,
right?
there are lots of surveys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So 2 surveys
Mm-hmm.
and you've got Linnea as a advisory group member.
Yeah.
And so I think there's opportunity to do that.
All right. Just so everyone knows, goal 5, so there are 5 big goals, but goal 5 is protect core identity. And it's safeguard the cultural, historic, and environmental assets that make our city unique and beautiful, and ensure that future development contributes to Portsmouth's character. And then there's a lot, I won't read it all under that. So that sounded very much coming from the cultural plan. And there's a section, there are sections earlier about workforce housing and housing affordability, and that's where I think there's a artist live work mention, which is probably coming again from the plan.
Great.
So it's good, but there is a lot there, and there's, like tourism, which I'm, interested in too. I think there's a broad question there that I feel like the master plan is kind of directing us towards depth of experience per tourist who comes rather than increasing tourism at all. And I think there could be a healthy moderate increase, not substantial increase. But I was a little like, well, I would like some more people coming in. So there are a few things like that I think it would be good if everyone familiarizes themselves and is.
And this will, but let's.
I'm gonna say that's bad. I mean, we shouldn't be saying we don't want to increase tourism when we've had a drop off in tourism in the last few years.
That's how I interpreted it.
Was what?
That we don't want more tourists. We want, like you said, more depth of money spent for.
Right, like we want more money
Yeah.
but I would like.
But I was kind of confused too, because then it said things about increasing tourism in the shoulder seasons. So I was so I'm excited to go on Wednesday
Yes.
and hear more from the people to see how they're interpreting it.
So keep in mind, this is a guiding document. It
Yes.
is not a paint by numbers.
Right.
Is this a fund by numbers in the end though? Like they get this, the city, like the city gets
Fine.
this document and then the budget is based off of this document. The most important things get the most money.
Uh,
In the end, right?
I will defer to Counselor Cook, but I don't think it's like, oh, well, there's this piece in the plan, better put the money. It's more of the guiding vision of what we want to be. And then every year, city council gets to look at the CIP and, this is me, not a counselor. Is what we're voting to fund
supporting.
relevant. Is that what people said they wanted? Is that what the master plan
yeah.
gave us guidance, as opposed to pulling an item out and funding it and
Right.
saying this is,
I mean, if one thing is basically only a single mention in a giant 40-page document, it basically comes across as a footnote. And when it comes time to fund things, the thing that got 100 mentions probably is the thing that gets more funding.
however, we have a public art review committee.
Right.
We have an arts and cultural
Yeah.
commission, right? We have an economic development commission. So we have these special interests
Yeah.
that are codified and appointed by city council so that it's not all about sewer pipes and sidewalks, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Whereas in some municipalities in Hampshire, I'm sure it's all about
Yeah.
sewer pipes and sidewalks.
And I think there's a bigger picture here is that the master plan, I think the most important part of the master plan is it drives the zoning changes in the city.
Yep.
So I will tell you, as a city councilor, I haven't looked at the last master plan since I ran the first time for city council, and I'm in my third term. I mean, I reviewed it then. Here's what the master plan is, tried to get a handle on it. That's why I know when people complain about the buildings in the north end, that was in the last master plan. That's why we have the build out in the north end. So for everyone who's complaining, but that was the public input we received, is that was the vision people had for that part of the city. And then the zoning reflects that. And that's why we have getting what we're getting.
And I think building on that, like some of the most consequential parts of this plan is actually those building, like there's some kind of node area placements away from city center, which I'm sure arts and culture plugs in somewhere, but I think for the way our town functions, that's probably the most important part of this.
Yeah, it's this concept of creating centers that are connected, but not just downtown. But what if you had places where there was mixed housing, arts and culture, shopping that aren't downtown? That's kind of what's starting to bubble up.
Right.
Yet connected. So you have more of a neighborhood feel that is a mini center because it's anchored by whether it's the senior center or community campus. And so those aren't just one-offs. There are things in between that keep people connected and different types of development. You would have different types of development there than say downtown or in the north end.
They can pull it off for the Olympics. We can pull it off. I think that's a great model, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's the model.
Yeah.
Right.
Connected, but they're different
But
parts
have
of
their-
the country.
And then there are important changes that'll happen in the zoning around areas that are kind of identified as where those centers should be, around what should be commercial, what should be residential, how much of it's gateway zoning. We did have a really positive change at the city council over the last month where we changed the gateway zoning. It was actually, we voted our last meeting to allow museums in gateway.
Yeah.
And so that's a new use, and it was all driven by rezoning the Albacore space as gateway. But so we just changed the definition, and now we can have museum space in gateway. And that's an advantage. So there are these kinds of things that we can push in those changes.
Yeah, but all that to say, so again, you have a master plan and sitting there for 10 years and sometimes they're very aspirational, sometimes I think they're more operational. But if you look at what has been going on for the last 6 years and the focus on diversifying our housing and having these gateways and overlays to make our city more accessible to different things. That's where it happens. Not my point to you, Eli. That's where it happens at the policymaker level. Not the policymaker saying, well, let me look that up before we vote on this. They're gonna, so it's a mix, but you certainly wouldn't want to have this master plan and then just do things in the opposite.
Right.
I don't think, because that would discount all this effort and input from citizens, I think.
The whole thing is a priority list, but it's not necessarily prioritized. It's not.
Yeah. No, definitely not. Definitely not.
even one mention of it is something that a council 9 years from now could take up and say, listen, it's been in the plan for 10 years, let's do this.
And I'll just give you an example, similar to the cultural plan, there's a real focus on not losing what we are. So what are we? We're a cultural hub, we're an arts and culture hub, we're about historic preservation, we're an economic hub, we're a lot of things. And so people can back me up, but the master plan is not gonna change who we are. It might be like, what do we want more of? What do we want less of? What do we want to be concerned about? What do we want to be in the future? But it's not this big, massive change. There's a lot of language in there about protecting and growing and enhancing. I love that. Those little city centers.
Yeah.
City centers, neighborhood centers. with-
Neighborhood centers,
with, God
yeah.
forbid, a half an hour frequency on coast. How great would that be?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah, there's some pretty exciting.
Great.
My hotspot.
Anyway, so anyone who can make it there, please do, and we'll keep it as like an agenda item here as we're hearing more. So closing next steps, I think our next meeting is Monday, May 18th, New Hampshire Theater Project.
Yes.
Are we good for that? Yeah, I think so.
Yes,
You guys
we
worked it
arranged
out with
with
Sean,
Sean.
right?
Okay.
I will remind him.
I just noticed that meeting's not on the Google Calendar yet, I don't think.
Yeah, the ones off-site aren't on the Google Calendar, I think.
On the
May 18th, I don't have it in
I
my
don't see it.
Google Calendar, our next meeting.
on the city website.
Whatever. I
just
get
our
back to.
Invites that you
Invites that you send us.
If
There's
you
a-
could please send an invite for the May 18th meeting at New Hampshire Theater Project, that would be great.
I can do that.
At your convenience.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
I can respond to the thread also, but the September meeting at PMAC is good.
Oh, great.
Yeah, Sean, I think it was the ones off-site. We didn't get an invite
Okay.
for.
Oh, you mean all the
invite
ones
to,
that
like,
Contra
the
Mayor
booth.
listed?
Yeah, like not in City Hall. Yeah.
Right.
Wait, quick, is the Monday, July, should that be July 20th?
It could be.
Okay.
I am
Trying
notorious
to make-
for.
Yes. The same, I do the same thing.
Yep, July 20th.
Just
Sorry.
making sure. No, that's totally fine.
September. All right. Gosh, I always forget if we need a motion to adjourn.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Thank you all.
Everybody check out the art show at the senior
Yeah.
activities.
Oh, thanks, yeah.
It is really